No, stop! Ah! Who sent you? Do you even know who you're working for? You don't know what you're doing. The research I'm doing will save millions of lives. Stop.
If you want to say prayer,
I keep a copy of all my data in a safety deposit box. If you have a conscience, get it out. The world will need it. No.
James was a devoted family man who often went to church with his wife, Brienne, and their son. Because of a knee injury, he regularly injected steroids to ease the pain. Trouble began when the military ordered drug tests for the entire unit. The results showed that the substance in his system violated military regulations, leading to his discharge and the loss of all his medical benefits and pension. James hid his shock and gave a formal salute before leaving. He told Brienne about what had happened, frustrated that he was now jobless while their debts kept piling up. Although he considered working for private companies, Brienne reminded him that they had agreed not to, no matter how tempting the salary might be. The next evening, Brienne came home and found James working on the roof. She told him that Mason, one of his colleagues, had taken his own life. Worried because James had been up there all night, she asked if he was okay, and he simply said he was fine. Brienne feared she might lose James too, but he reassured her that he was fine. At Mason's funeral, James ran into his former superior, Mike Hawkins, who invited him to have dinner with his family. During the meal, the atmosphere turned awkward as they joked about Mason and brought up the time James had served in the military. After dinner, James and Mike had some drinks together. Sensing that something was wrong, Mike listened as James admitted he wanted to rebuild his life. James confessed that he had thought about taking a private contract job, but the idea made him feel guilty. Mike told him there was nothing wrong with taking contract work since he had done a few himself. He explained that he worked for a private military company under government contracts. After hearing about the pay and thinking it over, James decided to join. Mike then took him to a farm to meet Rusty Jennings, the head of the company. Rusty called James into his office for a private talk and placed his file on the table. He said he had heard a lot about James from Mike and had also reviewed his father's record. James insisted that his father had nothing to do with it, but Rusty disagreed, saying he knew how the government used people like them and then abandoned them. James understood what Rusty meant. Rusty knew that James had received several offers from private companies, but he believed none of them could give him a true sense of purpose. He explained that his operations were carried out under the direct authority of the president. A situation in Berlin was threatening U.S. national security, and a special task force led by Mike would be deployed there within 2 weeks. James accepted the offer and received a $50,000 check from Dalton. That evening, he told Brienne he had found a new job and showed her the check, explaining that it was for a bodyguard position, though she didn't seem to believe him. James needed a job to support his family, but Brienne worried he would miss Junior's birthday. A few weeks later, he checked into a hotel where his luggage was safely stored before his flight to Berlin. Upon arrival, he settled into a small hotel and received his first assignment to surveil a Middle Eastern scientist named Seam, who was suspected of developing biological weapons. James took the assigned vehicle, drove to Seam's address, and set up a vantage point with a clear view to monitor all of his movements. James operated undercover at Seam's workplace, gathering passwords, photos, and recordings of phone conversations over several days. A week later, he was ordered to leave and move to a safe house. There, he met Mike, Sylvie, and Kaufman, who had compiled all the information he had collected. Seam's research on how viruses affect humans drew the attention of El Dawa, a charity organization linked to Al-Qaeda and led by Farouk. Mike, James, and Kaufman were assigned to capture Seam and secure his data, while Sylvie was in charge of the team's extraction. The laboratory had only moderate security. That night, the group armed themselves and boarded a van driven by Sylvie. As darkness fell, they reached the forest near the facility, subdued a guard, and used his fingerprint to gain entry into the building. They moved quickly through the laboratory, checking each room until they reached Seam's office. Kaufman began extracting the data while Mike interrogated the frightened scientist. Seam admitted that all of his research was stored in the laboratory's computer systems. Kaufman retrieved the intelligence data while Mike questioned who else had access to Seam's computer and where the backups were stored. Soon after, Mike received new orders to kill Seam, destroy the laboratory, and stage the incident as an industrial accident. He assigned the execution to James, who prepared to inject Seam with a lethal dose of poison. Seam begged for his life, insisting that he was only a scientist whose research could save millions of people. He told James about a secret backup of his data hidden in a safe. Ignoring his pleas, James injected him with the poison, and Seam slowly died. They set the server room on fire and quickly left as the building went up in flames. At the extraction point, the police intercepted them, triggering a fierce gunfight. Sylvie provided cover while the team retreated into the forest, but Kaufman was hit. Although they managed to take down several officers, Kaufman was killed while hiding behind a tree. Mike was shot while changing cover just as the SWAT team arrived. Sylvie was captured, but James managed to rescue her in time. He fired back at the advancing officers, threw a grenade, and carried the wounded Mike into the forest. As the police pursued them, they discarded their gear and crossed a river to escape. James found a drainage pipe and crawled in first, pulling the exhausted Mike behind him. They made it into the tunnel, where James bandaged Mike's wound. Shocked by the fact that they had killed police officers, James struggled with guilt, while Mike insisted it had been necessary. Losing too much blood, Mike urged James to leave him behind and protect the intelligence data, but James refused. He gave Mike his own blood and stayed with him underground. Mike gradually recovered, but James's injured knee gave out, leaving him unable to walk. James told Mike to take the documents and go ahead, saying he would rest for a while before following. Mike agreed and promised to come back for him. Mike made James promise to stay alive before disappearing into a nearby pipe. James rested until morning, took some pills, and then climbed out of the sewer. Emerging by the riverbank, he covered himself in mud to mask his scent. Hearing gunshots nearby, he spotted a father and son hunting and quietly stole food and clothes from their truck. He waited until nightfall, changed clothes, and went to the hotel Mike had mentioned. Inside the room, he found a note saying the handover was complete and a passport prepared for him. After falling asleep in the bathtub, he drained fluid from his knee and injected steroids to ease the pain. When Mike didn't return the next morning as promised, James decided to leave. James returned to town, bought a disposable phone, and called Rusty. He learned that Mike had never reported in. Rusty said he would send a rescue team and ask for James's location, but that made James suspicious. Rusty insisted he only wanted to bring James home and suggested meeting near the water's edge by Elson Bridge. James arrived at the location Rusty had mentioned and found a brown BMW, but he noticed some movement nearby. At the northwest corner of Elson Bridge, he began to wonder how Rusty could have arranged a rescue if Mike had never returned. Suspicion grew that Rusty might have killed him. Even so, Rusty still ordered him to get into the car. James tried to escape, but the men nearby opened fire. As gunmen on motorcycles chased after him, he shot one down and took his weapon. More enemies appeared ahead, forcing James to fight his way into the sewer. Inside, he smashed the lights and kept running through the dark tunnel. James hid in a dark corner of the sewer, waiting for two men to approach. When they got close enough, he struck and killed them both. Searching their pockets, he discovered they were former Marines. Before one of them died, James learned that their mission had been changed from rescue to elimination. Mike was also captured, but his fate remained unknown. One of the men showed James a photo of his family and gave him a phone number for help, warning that another team was on the way. He claimed he didn't know the target was an American and said Rusty had promised to pay them. Using the man's phone, James sent a message confirming the pickup, then escaped and boarded a train to an empty station, where he spent the night. Remembering what Seam said about the backup drive, James went to his house, unlocked the door with a code, and faced Seam's widow, Sophie. He assured her he wouldn't hurt her and only wanted to know where Seam had hidden his research. Sophie told James that the item was kept in a safe deposit box in town. James told her to take her son and drive there. When they arrived, Sophie wanted to bring her son inside, but James told her to go alone. The boy sadly asked if James had been his father's friend, and James sincerely said yes. Sophie returned with a tablet, and James told her to answer the security questions to unlock it. After that, he left her by the highway. That night, James used a payphone to call the number written on the Marine's photo and received the extraction point. Soon after, a man named Virgil arrived and reassured James that he would help him. As James stepped inside, Virgil suddenly knocked him out. He woke up in a safe house, tied to a bed and connected to medical equipment. Virgil showed him that all his belongings were still intact and released him once he calmed down. James said he wanted to go home, but Virgil told him that was no longer possible. Later, James watched a video where Seam explained that he had been developing an H5N1 vaccine, but powerful people had stopped him from sharing it with the world. A few nights later, James had dinner with Virgil as usual. James and Virgil talked about his time in Afghanistan and their families. Suddenly, Virgil was shot in the head. The lights went out and James fell to the floor. As the hit team closed in, he activated the gas system, setting the place to explode within minutes. As the strike team stormed the building, James jumped out of a second-story window and ran toward a nearby car. The house exploded behind him. He drove through the night and crossed the border back into the United States. Later, he found Mike living peacefully with his wife and children. The next day, James followed Mike from his house to a public parking garage. When he reached the top floor, Mike ambushed him and aimed a gun at him. James removed his helmet, and Mike froze in shock, realizing he was still alive. James accused him of betrayal and revealed that he knew the truth. Their mission had only been about stealing the virus cure. Mike told James that Rusty had declared him dead and even arranged compensation for his wife and children. He warned that Rusty would come after him if he found out the truth. Feeling betrayed, James pointed his gun at Mike, furious after everything he had sacrificed. Overwhelmed, he admitted his greatest fear, disappearing from his family, just like his father had, and now Mike had made that fear real. Determined to end it all, James convinced Mike to help him confront Rusty. Mike drove to Rusty's compound, broke through the gate, and took down several guards. James jumped out of the truck and moved toward the house as Rusty opened fire from a window. James cautiously entered the house, taking down one mercenary before engaging in a fight with another. Outside, Mike was shot while attacking Rusty, but managed to hit him in the stomach before being shot again. After eliminating the last mercenary, James found Rusty bleeding out from his wounds and finished him off. James pulled Mike into the truck and tried to save him, but Mike knew he wouldn't make it. Before dying, he gave James a message for his son. James set the truck on fire with Mike's body inside and returned home, now that everything was over.